Guys, today we're gonna make almond flour biscuits. This recipe is one of my family's favorites. It's inside of the Family Kickstart program. So it's paleo and grain-free, and we're using, obviously, almond flour, which is whole blanched almonds. That means that the almond skin has been removed and then ground into a powdery form. Now, almond meal is going to have brown specks in it because it's the whole almond ground with the skin and all. You can use either for this recipe and you'll still have amazing and delicious biscuits. I'm also using tapioca starch. Tapioca starch is what's going to give these biscuits a little bit of a fluffier texture. You do need a starch. If you don't have tapioca starch, you can also use potato starch. This is a grain-free recipe, so we are not using cornstarch, but tapioca starch is we're also using in this recipe. This is a no egg recipe. We are using coconut milk for this. The thing about baking with almond flour is that the recipe will always have more liquid. So whether it's eggs or in this recipe, we're using coconut milk. So that's how baking with almond flour is slightly different than traditional flour. Now to the coconut milk, I'm using a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And I'm just going to mix these two in here and set that aside. Now I'm gonna be using a food processor to combine my dry ingredients and make my almond flour dough. If you don't have a food processor, don't worry. You can use a large bowl to combine our dry ingredients with the coconut milk and cut in our cold butter, which you could just do it with your hands and make sure that everything's combined. But to keep this going and make it fast, we're just gonna use a food processor into which I'm going to add my almond flour. And then the tapioca starch is gonna go in here. Going to add some baking soda and baking powder. A lot of baking powders will contain cornstarch in them. There are some in the market available that are made with potato starch or tapioca starch. So we are going to use this grain-free baking powder as well. A little bit of salt, and I'm gonna give this a good mix. All you need to do is give this a good pulse, or if you're using a bowl, just make sure you're whisking it to combine really well. So all of your almond flour has both the baking soda and baking powder in it. So I'm just going to turn on my food processor and add my cold pats of butter and incorporate it into the mixture until it resembles sand. Typically for this recipe, I use ghee, but I'm out of it in the kitchen, so I'm going to use butter. Both work great. Let me show you what it needs to look like before you incorporate your coconut milk in there. It is already sticky, and as you can see, it's sort of like pebbly. So this is what we're looking for in our almond flour biscuit dough. Just gonna pour in my coconut milk into my dough. So unlike traditional biscuits, this is not a dry dough, okay? So this is a little bit of sticky, and the way I like to do this simply is by spooning in my dough onto my sheet pan and baking them. That's why another term would be drop biscuits. And let me show you, the almond flour dough is sort of sticky, but this is what you want. And we're just going to drop it right into our sheet pan. These drop biscuits make a great side for dinner, like with chili or salads. They are terrific, obviously, for breakfast. Now, will almond flour biscuits have that crunchy texture on the outside? And the answer is yes. As you bake them, they are going to be crunchy and golden brown on the outside. You could even brush these with coconut milk and they'll be beautifully golden. Now, something that I do sometimes is I sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon over the biscuits, and then they're cinnamon biscuits. They're delicious. But first, let's bake them. Guys, check these almond flour biscuits out. They have a crispy texture on the outside. They're cooked inside. Let's give it a close look. Super good. They're crumbly, delicious. You're gonna be able to use these as a side for breakfast with some eggs. Can you imagine dipping these into that egg yolk? Below this video, you're gonna find a link to the Family Kickstart program where this recipe comes from. It's easy, delicious, and I know you and your family are gonna love eating less processed foods, eliminating sugars, and feel really great. See you next time.